Glenn Greenwald, who I think is one of the few real journalists left in the country, went on Fox News to discuss the Democratic Party establishment's hysteria over alleged Russian hacks, and he basically said everything that I wanted to say, but more eloquently. So let's go ahead and listen to that.
Here's the story. I know you read it. It really had an instantaneous effect on the way people are covering the post-election sort-out. It said, quote, the CIA has concluded in a secret assessment that Russia intervened in the 2016 election to help Donald Trump win the presidency. That sentence right there changed everything here in Washington. Should we believe that assessment?
We should be extremely skeptical of it for multiple reasons. To begin with, this is a secondhand report, so you have somebody whose identity is being shielded describing what the CIA supposedly concluded, laundering that through the Washington Post. These are assertions that are being made completely unaccompanied by any evidence whatsoever, let alone evidence that we can touch and rationally review. There's all kinds of reasons to suspect the CIA statements, including the fact that they're wrong all the time. They're programmed in a lot of cases to disseminate disinformation, and there's lots of reasons to view them as political actors. And so I think we ought to be highly skeptical.
But what's interesting, I agree with that assessment completely. I mean, they're sometimes right, they're sometimes wrong, but they're certainly skilled in deception. That's what they do. And yet, politically, here in Washington, the response has been, well, if you don't believe this account of analysis by the CIA, you're somehow acting on behalf of the Kremlin, or you're not patriotic, or you're insulting the memory of the CIA officers who've died in the line of duty. Have you seen that kind of response before?
I saw it from a Democratic congressman, Adam Schiff, actually, when you interviewed him last week, and all you were doing was asking him for evidence, and he told you should go to put your show on RT. And in my journalism, this is the response I've been getting for many months now, as not even when you deny that it happened. I mean, nobody should deny that Russia might have done this. Of course Russia might have done this. This is the kind of thing that all states do, and certainly Russia. But all you do is ask for evidence before believing it, before embracing it as true. And that alone subjects you to accusations that you might be disloyal, that you're somehow a tool of the Kremlin. It's a really toxic environment that I think Democrats have created, a little bit out of desperation and out of political maneuvering as well. But it is quite dangerous.
Well, it is so weird that Russia is the focus. I mean, speaking for myself, I'm agnostic on Russia. I don't speak Russian. I've never been to the country. I don't have strong feelings about it one way or the other. I'm willing to believe anything, basically. I'm open-minded. And yet, all of a sudden, Russia seems to be villain number one. Why is that? It seems strange.
You know, one of the really interesting things is in 2012, when Mitt Romney ran against Barack Obama, the Democrats mocked Romney mercilessly for depicting Russia as the #1 geopolitical threat, and they released a video saying Mitt Romney's stuck in the Cold War, he doesn't understand the 21st century. Obama in the debate said the 1980s want their foreign policy back, to think that Russia is this grave threat. And throughout the Obama presidency, he tried accommodating Putin. He didn't arm anti-Russian factions in Ukraine. He tried to cooperate with him in Syria. It was really an election year political theme that the Democrats manufactured out of whole cloth, that the Russians, that Putin posed some sort of existential threat to the United States, that they're our enemy, our entrenched enemy, and we all have the patriotic duty to resist it, and it's not working. The Americans don't wake up and worry about Vladimir Putin, but Democrats seem to be digging in further into this losing political attempt.
Well, see, I guess what bothers me about it is that unlike the attack on the Trotskyites, who were sort of a powerless group exiled to Mexico City, Russia's a real country with nuclear weapons. And are there consequences of what we've seen in the last 6 months, where our foreign policy seems to have shifted to a pretty hostile posture toward Russia? That seems reckless to me, if in fact there's only a political motivation behind it.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, the Democrats were very alarmed by Trump's accepting this phone call from the president of Taiwan, based on the not invalid argument that China is a nuclear-armed power and a formidable threat, and we should be careful about producing unnecessary confrontation, which I agree with. But the same is true of Russia. To sit here and sort of suggest that Vladimir Putin lurks behind every American problem, to concoct these wild, elaborate conspiracy theories, to try and convince Americans that Russia is this grave threat to the United States, that we all have to stand up, I think it's incredibly dangerous. Not just because it creates a toxic environment domestically, but because it's very dangerous. It can put us on a path of almost unintentional confrontation with a country that can do a lot of damage.
That's the way it seems to me. I don't think you and I have ever voted for the same person. So I hear you say that because it makes me feel less crazy. I thought it was missing something. Glenn Greenwald, thanks a lot for joining us. I appreciate it.
So I think that this was by far the most intelligent conversation I've seen in the mainstream media since this whole debacle began. I mean, everything from Glenn Greenwald pointing out the party's hypocrisy and how they criticized Mitt Romney for his stance towards Russia, to the fact that Tucker Carlson pointed out how this is just reckless, even if it's true and you could prove it. This is reckless behavior. What's the end goal? Do you want an actual war with Russia? So I think that this was a brilliant conversation, and I really do commend these two people for having an intelligent discussion when they have completely different political beliefs. So when it comes down to the question of whether or not Russia hacked the United States and John Podesta's emails in the DNC, you could basically summarize Glenn Greenwald's response with, I don't know, but show us the evidence. Maybe it's true, but show us the evidence. And also, I'd like to add, does that take away from the substance? No, it does not. So even if you can prove it, that doesn't unexpose the corruption that was revealed in the release of the DNC and John Podesta's emails. I mean, we saw that Hillary Clinton is overtly corrupt. She was doing the bidding of Clinton Foundation donors while she was Secretary of State. That's incredibly corrupt. Also, when it comes to the DNC, they rigged the primary in favor of Hillary Clinton. You can't undo what we discovered. So I don't care how much you cry about Russia, that's not going to delegitimize what was in those emails. Now, one part in there was really important. So Tucker Carlson pointed out that if you don't believe this, the Democratic people will treat you as though you're acting on behalf of the Kremlin. And this is basically the response that Greenwald has received since he's been speaking out against the Democratic Party's unvalidated accusations at this point. So his outlet, The Intercept, which is one of the few news outlets that actually does good objective journalism, they are apparently now traitors. So a journalist for Politico tweets, The Intercept and Sputnik, Kremlin news, see eye to eye on the Russian hacking investigation. You got him. A pollster tweets, who couldn't guess The Intercept would slowly morph into a Russia Today-esque propaganda machine? Right, so one of the few objective journalistic outlets that still does investigative reporting, they're doing propaganda for the Russians. Okay, very brilliant. And also The Intercept's Li Fong, which is one of the best journalists in the country, tweets that Dems are calling him a Putinite Nazi for pointing out that Obama wasn't effective as he could have been in carrying out his domestic agenda in 2009. Now, I'm sure that Putin also approved of this article published in The Intercept about how he controls the internet and public opinion in Russia, or about how Russian book publishers censor books for Putin and how publishing children's books in Russia is just a joke, or about the country's homophobia. I'm sure that Putin directly approved of these articles, right? And since I have the same position as Glenn Greenwald here, I'm of the mind that I think you should show us the evidence if you want us to accept this claim. Let me expose myself. I actually have a dog, and his name is Vladimir. That's right. So I am a Russian shill because I agree with Glenn Greenwald and have a reasonable position, and I have a dog named Vladimir. So before you even have to do it, I'm outing myself, guys. Russian shill right here. Dog named Vladimir. Look, all of this illustrates that the Democratic Party, they've turned into the party of Alex Jones, where they not only peddle these conspiracy theories, but they actually lambast anyone who doesn't agree with them and toe the party line and this bullshit narrative. Look, again, I want to reiterate here, and let me be very clear with my words. I'm not saying that Russia didn't hack the DNC or John Podesta's emails, but we've seen contradictory evidence of that. And furthermore, if it is the case, I'm just saying show us the evidence. And even if you can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that they did hack John Podesta's emails and the DNC, well, that doesn't erase what we found in those emails. So either way, I don't know what the end game is here. If Russia did it, do we go to war with them? Do we do more sanctions on them? I mean, I just don't understand what Democrats are trying to get out of this. And I think that what this comes down to is them having cognitive dissonance and not being able to accept that they lost because they put up the wrong candidate to beat Donald Trump. The reason why Hillary Clinton lost was not because of Vladimir Putin or WikiLeaks. She lost because she was a flawed candidate and the American people saw right through her. We didn't need WikiLeaks and Russia allegedly to confirm what was already obvious, that the DNC rigged the primary, that Hillary Clinton was overtly corrupt. We already knew this. They just gave us confirmation. So yeah, the Democrats, have completely and utterly lost their minds.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.